Hey, did you guys hear about the antennas that got married? Well, the wedding was terrible, but the reception was outstanding. So there it is right away. I'm just so amped up to get into this and talk more about World War I and U.S. history. And that joke comes to you from Garrett Rossborough from First Hour. So anyways, thanks for the joke, Garrett. But now we're going to get back to a little bit of U.S. history. So today, really, we're going to be talking about U.S. involvement, or I guess I could say the lack of U.S. involvement, but we're starting to build up that escalation until we get to the point where the United States is going to get involved. So the first thing we got to talk about before events specifically hit America is something known as the Germany Plan. Now, the Germans, as I said, they are now a unified country. They have now declared war. They are trying to become an industrial powerhouse, and they immediately launch an attack on France. They think that the Russians, they're not going to really mobilize that quickly. They know that Russia's going to get involved in the war, but they don't really think it's going to be a couple of days or a month. They think it's going to take a lot longer than that. So the Germans, their plan, go in, attack the French, take over those territories, push them back, and then they can focus on the Russians if the time comes to that. But one thing that is a major struggle for the Germans is how do they get there? How do they get to France? They think the best way is to go through Belgium, which actually I would say is probably one of the worst mistakes that they make all throughout the war. And the reason it's such a mistake is that Belgium and Great Britain, they have a treaty. They have an alliance. And Great Britain has stated time and time again that they are going to maintain the neutrality of Belgium. Now, when you have the Germans crossing into Belgium, that is breaking neutrality. That is having a foreign army come in and invade your country. Now, it's true that they weren't going to go there to try to attack Belgium. They were essentially just using it as a road to get to France. But as soon as they go into Belgium, now all of a sudden the British, they're involved in the war. So now they're worried about the French. They're worried about the potential of Russia becoming involved. But now they have the British to worry about as well. So as soon as they cross Great Britain, they're now going to declare war. And that is when the cries start to come to America. We need to help out. We need to join the Allied cause. We need to join the German cause because that's where a lot of our heritage comes from. And before we kind of get to that a little bit more, it now breaks off into two groups. You have the Allies, which I have here, who is Russia, France, and Great Britain, and the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. So from here on out, when I talk about the different sides, I'm going to use the terms Allies and Central Powers. So it's a good idea to kind of highlight and know the difference between these ones here. So now American taking sides. So public opinion is going to favor the Allied cause. And one of the reasons that that's the case is because of just the ties that we have to the British, the political history. I mean, even just the overall history of America. Yeah, I know we fought a war against them twice, and we won twice, so yeah, go America. We're pretty awesome. But nonetheless, because of that heritage and because the French are also a part of the Allied cause, who are our first allies during the Revolutionary War, public opinion is going to start to be going towards them. However, you have people who are like Irish Americans who are also kind of held hostage, I guess, in a way by the British. So they're going to be against it. People in the Midwest, as we know today, a lot of German heritage. So it's going to be very, very difficult for President Woodrow Wilson to pick one side early on in the war, which is why his first statement, his first stance is we are going to be neutral. We are not going to get involved in the war. And even though there's a lot of push for it, and even though just about every member in his cabinet says we need to declare war, we need to build up our army and get prepared for this, he does not want to do that right away. So we're not at the point yet where we are going to be declaring war. And I know it says American take side on top there, but really Allied cause is going to be the push at this point. And the reason is the British, they start to use propaganda. They're going to use propaganda towards the Americans to get us involved. And here's probably one of the most famous images of that propaganda. So right here, this guy's name is John Bull. It's kind of almost like the American Uncle Sam. And it says, who's absent? Is it you? Well, we'll kind of take a couple seconds and reflect on what that means. This is going to be kind of two-folded here, and we're going to do an assignment based on propaganda, so I don't really want to get too much into the meaning of it. But this is just going to be the stuff that starts to get brought over to the United States to get us involved in the war, get us involved in the conflict. Another thing that the British do, they cut the transatlantic telegraph cable. And the reason they do this is they want to make sure they control all the news that America gets on the war. So if they cut this telegraph cable, we can't get any news from France or Germany or Spain or any other country involved in the war. Now, because the British are the only one that have a direct line to us, every single piece of information that we get comes from them. And again, it's very biased. They are trying to get us to join their side. So they use that to kind of get to their advantage and help us get involved that way. Now, German submarines are also going to be an issue. And German submarines, I guess before we start talking about them, the British and the French, they are going to declare a state of emergency. And under that state of emergency, they are not going to allow any neutral merchant ship to bring goods anywhere in Europe. And the reason that's the case, they don't want any contraband being brought to Germany. And when I say contraband, that doesn't just mean like illicit drugs or alcohol, stuff like that. That's food, that's medical supplies, that's weapons. And any American ship that is caught in open water, the British, they are going to take it, they're going to force it to go to a British port, and they're going to confiscate all of the goods that are on there. Now, this makes Americans outraged. They are upset that all these merchants are getting their things stolen. But Germany, they take it a step further. What the Germans announce is that they will sink any ship around Great Britain without any warning, no matter if it's a merchant ship or a part of a navy. So they're now going to be involved in unrestricted warfare. And this is definitely going to make the Americans, it's going to start to make them upset. But still having neutrality. The Germans, they're going to start attacking these ships, and probably the most famous one is known as the Lusitania. It's carrying 1,200 passengers, and on the right here I have a notice of warning of this ship here. But the Germans, they sink the British passenger ship and kill 1,200 passengers that are on board. Of those 1,200 passengers, 128 of them are Americans. So now we have American lives lost because of the war. But are we going to get involved? Not yet. We're not to that point. People are definitely, they're upset with Wilson that he hasn't declared war, that he hasn't made a push for declaring war at this point. And he just keeps sending ambassadors over to Germany to try to come up with a plan and come up with a compromise. And the Germans eventually pledge that they are no longer going to sink merchant ships without a warning. Now, the big thing is they're still going to sink these ships, but there has to be a warning. And that's going to be kind of a small, little, tiny compromise that is done to get America to keep us out of the war. But it's not going to be for long. And the reason it's not going to be for long is shortly thereafter, Arthur Zimmermann, who is a German ambassador, he sends a telegraph to another German ambassador in Mexico telling Mexico to declare war. And not only to declare war, but once you enter the United States and attack the Americans, when the Germans win the war, they're going to give all the lost territory that was once Mexico back to them. So that means that's Texas, Arizona, California, New Mexico. All of that land is going to be returned to them based on the German winning the war. Now, the British officials, they interpret this, and eventually known as the Zimmermann telegram, and there's kind of a lot of controversy with it today. Some people think it was made up. Some people think that it was just kind of a conspiracy by the British to get America more involved in the war. But what we do know for sure, this letter is leaked to the media. Now, once this is to the media, once it is out in the public, telling a foreign country invade the United States, America, we're now almost to that point where we declare war. We're close. We're not there. We're just not there yet. German officials, they begin to sink more merchant ships. So they're not listening and they're not going along with their Sussex pledge. They're going to sink 6 American ships. And really they do this because they think, America, they can't get an army to Europe fast enough. They don't have militarization like everyone else does. They have a strong army, but it's only within their own country. So really their fear at this time isn't necessarily that America is going to get involved. Really all their propaganda is going to be anti-Russian. But because of the Zimmerman telegram, because of the sinking of the Lusitania, because of the unrestricted warfare and public sentiment towards Woodrow Wilson to declare, America is going to declare war and make a major impact on World War I.